we start, we'll just give it a minute. I thank you for being patient. I know many of you were waiting over on Mighty Networks. We had technical problems. We apologize to everybody. We thank you for your patience, and we will get started momentarily.
And if you're on 2 devices, please close one down because we only have 1,000 people and we want as many people as possible to be able to join.
Yes, thank you. And Chris, are you running the control or am I running the control for recording? I mean, I can record as a co-host.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Go for it.
Okay.
Because I'm seeing some people showing up 3 times. Now, I don't know.
Right. Oh. Yeah, we can say that when we've reached capacity, we can say that as a notice before. We just need to be patient. Or just
maybe I should come in.
No, because there'll be a echo.
No, turn it off.
So well, I turned mine off. I turned mine off.
Carol knows what to do.
We've got the link now, and that's how I got in, because I'd been waiting for a while. But now the link is posted, so it could open in my Zoom, if that helps.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so we're almost at capacity. If anyone has multiple different, you're on your phone and your device, if you could please close out one of them so as many people as possible can join, we would appreciate that.
Can you let Carol in, please, because she's going to help moderate.
Is she fine?
If you can.
If you can find her.
I was logged in on 2 devices too, and I logged off.
I got Carol.
So.
Thank
They're
you.
going to do in other languages.
Okay, thanks, Sue.
They're going to do it in other languages.
As
Yeah,
somebody is
Simon and Angela
transcribing the
need to come
meeting
again.
Oh,
there's an AI is transcribing the meeting again.
Close that off.
Yeah, and I didn't approve that. Although it looks like someone else is transcribing it. So
Yes.
if anybody who's trying to transcribe the meeting, please, with that's not permitted here, we will be recording this.
So do you want to?
So Angela, I didn't get, I declined one, but there's another message here that I did not get the request for. So I don't know if you can.
Chris, can you mute? Can we just mute all, and then everybody else who needs to speak will mute? Unmute. I mean, Simon. Like, we need to make.
Done. Thank you, Angela. You're on mute.
Thank
Yes,
you.
I think I closed out of my phone on my phone.
Okay, so why we muted everybody, and yet people are still talking? Just saying. Okay. All right, we are still waiting until the room fills before we get started, so bear with us. There's still a bunch of people in the waiting room. I don't know what's gonna happen. For some reason, I can't find the people who are already here to unmute Simon. So Simon, you can unmute.
I'm
Thank
all
you.
right. I'm
no,
here.
it's fine. We can unmute.
We're
Okay.
here. It's fine.
Okay. I was
And
hoping that I
anybody-
didn't do it.
Anyone in the waiting room, as people, if somebody gets kicked out, somebody new will be allowed in.
Right.
They're just sort of like in line.
Can somebody also make me a co-host, please?
Yeah, can someone make Carol co-host, please?
Yes.
Have you got your hand up, Carol?
No.
You should put it up as well. Oh, okay. You didn't plan to be on.
No, she didn't.
Okay.
Great. So we're reaching near capacity, so we'll start probably in just a couple of minutes. I want to make sure that everybody they're muted and the right people are unmuted. All right. So what is this? Okay.
Am I in?
Yes, ma'am. And you
Yes,
need to
you
turn
are.
your sound off, please. Okay, so we're just a short ways away from the room being full. We will, the meeting, this entire event will be recorded. We will get it into Mighty Networks library as soon as possible. Again, we apologize for any inconvenience for you waiting on Mighty Networks and it not coming up. Obviously, they're having some sort of technical issue with their live streams. So what we will do is we will go over some logistics like we normally do, and we're back to Zoom. So it'll be the same things as always. The only difference here will be, maybe we should just wait for everybody so I don't have to say it twice.
It
If
says
you-
there's 1,000 in. It says there's 1,000 in.
Do you? I only have 991, so I was looking. All right, so let's do our thing while we wait. Let me get this. So just a quick note. Thank you first again for being here. We won't be taking questions from the chat during this event. All the questions for this session have already been pre-selected, but the chat will be moderated as usual. So you feel free to connect with one another. We ask that you be courteous and respectful while Simon is speaking. And as always, as I said, it will be recorded in the Worldwide Voices Library. We're going to do a turn over here to the co-host, Sue Cimino, who will introduce our guest as soon as I hit the record button.
Recording in progress.
Welcome, everybody. We're sorry for the little kerfuffling at the beginning, but this is going to be an amazing event. And I want to introduce our main speaker. And as co-founder of Connecting Consciousness, Simon doesn't need an introduction. So I'd like to take this opportunity to be the voice of members worldwide and express our deep gratitude to you, Simon and Becky, for your long-range vision in starting Connecting Consciousness, for your impeccable integrity in dealing with all the challenges, and for your leadership in enabling us as members, both individually and as a group, to make a positive contribution to our world. You are loved and appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a zillion questions. Hopefully you can stay for a while. And Angela's going to ask the first one.
Right, but before we do that, just very quickly, I know Becky wants to say a few hellos. I wanted to first of all say the reason that we didn't want this on YouTube was because whilst I appreciate that it's very nice to, sit at home in your armchair and not play a role and just tune in when you want, it seemed right to reward our members. So if you were a CC member, then you get to do this rather than somebody who's not a member and just goes onto YouTube. So it was a way of thanking people and to make sure that, there was something in it for them. Unfortunately, somebody did try to leak it to YouTube, and that's why we've had to go down this road. In terms of the technical issues tonight, I can just assure everyone here that it's not the team. This is a technical issue beyond us that's occurred. I hope it's just literally a technical issue and not an attempt to try to stop me tonight. It wouldn't be the first time that that's occurred. I'm very sorry that we're down to 1,000. We did have 3,000, but what we'll do is we'll redo this again because coordinator very kindly paid for this. We've got a month, so I think we're going to try and do this again with the 3,000 and try and get that done. So that's that point there. I did want to very quickly, because it might not come up in the questions, we want to talk about David Wilcott. Know that that's a big issue. People will be interested perhaps in what I have to say on that. So I did want to tell you some things that you won't find out and won't know. The only person who could be close to this, yet again, would be Kerry Cassidy. But what I want to tell you is that, like many people who perhaps from birth were chosen by the good side and by the bad side to play a role, sometimes things become sometimes things break down and issues can occur. It's absolutely sure that because David had connections with extraterrestrials or extra dimensionals, although he wasn't a scientist like me and others, he will have had experience with advanced propulsion systems, and you can't mix with these non-humans and not pick up a few bits and pieces. So it is true that David was part of a group that was developing what the Americans call free energy, but in terms of a propulsion system as much as a powering system. And this would now put the death of people in this field to about, I don't know, 12 or 13. David was not a scientist. Most of the deaths that have occurred since Christmas have been scientists, but David wasn't in it as a scientist. He was in it because he had inherent knowledge. I remember myself, after Win Keach had been to one of the big conferences, and he was talking about what they were talking about, the engines, and I was, although I didn't go to that conference, I was able to tell Win how the engine works. And so I think that David would have been doing the same thing. David may have committed suicide. He may have, but if he did, he didn't do it out of choice. He may have done this, but not out of choice. Many people, commit suicide out of choice because something or someone is controlling them. And I'm not talking about demons. I'm talking about deep state. I'm talking about the deep state. So that's it, this point. I don't think anyone out there appreciates, as I do, that David's inherent knowledge about propulsion systems and his work with a legitimate company has led, I think, to what's happened. Okay, will the truth come out? No, it won't. So that's that. And before I bring Becky in, because Becky wants to say hello, and so she should, I just wanted to do a quick call out for a donation. In 2015, Connecting Consciousness did a worldwide meditation to take down the Hadron Collider. 3 of our people, key people, suffered immediately deafness and damaged teeth, which needed repair immediately. Now, at the time, I received 3 cracked teeth myself, but I didn't have any real bad issues. But in the last few years, it's played up, and since just after Christmas, that's become quite bad, and I'm going to need some, I think they call it structural. I'm going to need quite a lot of work done, and it is going to cost a little bit. So if anybody tonight, tomorrow, can just send a little bit of donation, that would be very gratefully received. And that's on my website, simonparks.org. So go to my website, there's a donate button. It is literally now payback time. 10 years, 11 years ago, we took down the CERN, and unfortunately now my teeth are feeling it. 3 of us all had teeth problems, although they had to have theirs done straight away. Mine was cracked, but it's happening now. So if you can spare a little bit, I'd be very grateful for that. Okay, did you want to say hi?
Yes, I'm sort of leaning over here.
Go on, you get through
But
that.
yeah, I just want to say hello to everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm sorry as well about the technical issues. It definitely wasn't anyone's fault. So much work went into this. So, but it's amazing that we managed to get a Zoom link up and running so quickly, because Simon is 100% dedicated to answering your questions today. And it genuinely is so lovely to see you all, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Becky.
Over to you.
Thank you. So basically, I didn't choose the questions.
No.
I haven't seen the questions. The questions have been chosen by others. I'm going to answer them really quickly so I can rattle through them. Okay.
Alrighty, Simon. So let's start with the first question. This comes from Sabine in Bavaria, Germany. It says, Dear Simon, thank you for your love, your knowledge, and your wisdom, which you and Becky are sharing with the world through CC. What do you think is the most important question that could be asked of you from Germany, Bavaria, and how would you answer it?
The most important question would be, I think, when would the truth about Adolf Hitler come out? The real truth. Okay, next one. I'm going to go through these really quickly so we can get as many done as possible.
This one will be quick. It's from Michelle in Southern California. Her question is, are you still in need of donations?
Oh,
Which is
well, that's amazing. The answer is sadly yes, and I explained why. You know, I've got to have, the word I want is reconstruction. I've got to have reconstruction on my teeth, and it's not just a simple filling, it's quite a lot of work. Thank you.
Okay, the next question comes from Anne Marie in Switzerland. She says, in Facebook, there's a site called Sky's Medbeds, offering medbeds treatments for various countries, including Switzerland. Is this genuine or not?
Just because someone's name is on a website doesn't mean it's their website or it's official or it's approved by them. There are about 3, 4, 5, 6 Simon Parkes websites, which are not official, but have been set up by the White Hats without my permission. And we have written several times to YouTube or whoever it is to take them down. They won't take them down. And so it's a white hat operation, so let them get on with it. Any site asking for payment either before, during, or after a medbed treatment is not official. There are plenty of modalities out there, but they shouldn't be called medbeds. They should be called something else. Any medbed that's official will be free, and I will be one of the first to announce it, not some of these gurus. I will be one of the first to do it, and very interesting was Mark Z, is it Mark Z Carroll, and is it Jennifer Fallow, Jennifer Fallow, made a comment that she had one of her connections or visions or communications, and I missed this. Apparently she said that it came to her that Simon Parkes would be playing a key role with medbeds, and a number of CC members had picked that up and let me know that. And I then went back to the people above me and said, this is public, how do you feel about this? Because we're a bit concerned. And it's so interesting that the message coming from up top was, well, we like her, she's quite genuine, and she's probably right. So that was interesting. But I understand that post has been taken down now. But no, medbeds are free. Okay.
So the next question comes from Carrie in California. She asks, what are your thoughts on our soul as a multidimensional essence that exists across different planes and frequencies simultaneously, such as a small portion of our soul consciousness inhabiting our physical and energetic body in one or more densities, with our higher self being the majority of our same soul in the highest frequency?
I like most of that except the last bit. The majority of your soul would not be in the highest frequency. The majority of your soul would be in the frequency that you were there to learn from. But you might be anchored in other frequencies to give you guidance, to stop you from going crazy. If you are a 9th dimensional person and you have the history of that and you come to Earth, then it's crazy, isn't it? So you might want that anchorage up there. But your main body, shall we say, energy body, would be in the dimension that you were there to have impact on and to learn the most. Yes, that's it's a pretty deep concept, but it's highly accurate that you can exist in multiple planes in real time. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Simon, the next question comes from John in Essex, UK. Why is it so painful? The twin flame, I am divine femme, even though I am male. I have tried researching. The pull is so powerful. Is it black magic? If my mind is jumping all over the place, I feel it's about alignment.
Well, that seems to be more complicated. It seems that the questioner is talking about two parts to themselves, male and female as a twin flame. Generally speaking, I've seen the creation of souls, and they are very much like the petals on a flower. So literally, if you imagine the petals of a flower, and each petal, which is oval shape or elliptical shape, is a soul, and it buds off from the creational source. You can sometimes have a double petal, and that becomes a twin flame. It becomes generally male and female. That's the normal run of things. And when you incarnate, they split, and one will go to male, one will go to female, and then you may or may not find your twin flame on that lifetime. You may have to go 3 or 4 lifetimes and you find him or her, etc., etc. But there are instances. This is why this question is genuine, and that is why the person who's written this is genuine, because you will not find this in a book. There's very little knowledge out there about this. Sometimes those petals do not bifurcate. They don't divide. So you actually have a soul that is a twin flame, which is male and female. And it can't split at that point to go into 2 separate bodies. It goes into one body. So I hope that that explanation is enough for the person to actually understand who they are, what they are, and that actually it's perfectly normal. It's unfortunate that the bifurcation, the division of that soul did not occur before they incarnated. So that's what they are. So it would be true to say that that person found their twin flame in this lifetime, which is a plus. Okay.
Thank you, Simon.
Next, we have a question from Elena in Ohio. Would experiencing precognitions that come true later be considered a portal within ourselves, or a connected message from our higher self, or signs and signals from our guides? And why do some people have this ability?
Portal is the closest one. The others, they're relevant. So for instance, you could be tipped off by one of your guides who has seen the future and wants to tip you off. But generally speaking, it's more to do with a form of a portal where an individual has access to time. And again, we have a problem here because we're taught that time runs in a straight line. And time doesn't. It can either corkscrew or it can do figures of 8. But the truth is that it can come back on itself. And you're then capable, if you have that ability, to be able to, not like a wormhole where you would, oops, I don't know what's going on there. Okay. Not where you would, cut through, as it were, but you were able to connect to a week, a month, a year ahead. But the difficulty is that in most of those instances, the individual doesn't have a time frame. So they'll see something or they'll know something, but they won't necessarily know at what time and what place. So what you tend to do is for locations to try to identify where it is. So portal is the closest one to that.
Thank you.
So this question comes from the members in Puerto Rico. When will the public see arrests and justice regarding the pandemic?
I'm not convinced they will. I think there will be 1 or 2 high-profile arrests, but I think that the vast majority of those people who we would consider culpable or guilty will no longer be employed, but there won't be a public reckoning. This is one of the gravest problems that we have, whereby certain people who don't have the authority to make promises have made promises that there will be all these arrests and that it'll all be done. But the reality is that that's unlikely to happen. There will be a number of high-profile arrests, but nothing like what we've been told or led to believe. For the last 6 years, I've given, for the American market, the candy store owner, for the European British market, the sweet shop owner, where I've said what they're doing is they're just replacing the manager or the owner of the candy store, and all the employees, they just stay there and they carry on, because it's less disruption to take control of a candy store than it is to go in and cleanse it all and clear it out. The problem is that if you're spiritual, as we are, we want that cleansing, we want that clearing out, but we're not involved in politics, we're not involved in stocks and shares, we're not involved in running countries. And our option is a nuclear option, and they're not prepared to crash the United States, because that's what it would bring about. It would bring an economic crash to America. And so what they're doing is they're taking out key people quietly. So there won't be a public reckoning. That's not going to happen. Okay.
Thank you, Simon.
Next, from Elizabeth in Michigan. Greetings, Simon. I understand that Bruce's intel is mostly lies and he has a lot of followers. However, if there is no exchange or currency revaluation for the public, many people who hold these currencies will be furious or very angry because the false intel has led them to believe that the Jubilee exists and that the wealth of the wicked will be used for the righteous. Letting the public down and creating false hope doesn't seem to me like something the military and Trump would allow, especially after giving everyone false hope and limiting their opportunities to do good in the world. Can you please share some insight on this for us?
Sure. This is not just a military operation, the revaluation. It is a Christian, Jewish, religious operation. If we go back to the question, it is about the individual believing the person giving them this false intel. So rather than blame the RV guru, as they self-styled, some of them are called, it is better to look at the individual and say, why did you believe that person? Because, the military will turn around and say, well, we never promised you that. Trump will turn around and say, I never promised you that. You tell us who promised you. And they'll say, well, Wolverine promised it, and Bruce promised it, and whoever else promised it. And they'll say, well, they're nothing to do with us. We don't employ them. They're not spokespeople for us. So from a religious standpoint, Christian Judaism standpoint, the Bible talks about discernment in its own way. It talks about doing and giving without wanting to receive. It talks about not being greedy. And so with Connecting Consciousness and other organizations, this is a framework where we can do good and at some point be rewarded. And we've always held the position that, organizations will be funded and their members will then benefit from that funding, rather than, you go to some place and you get a load of money for nothing, basically. So I've always been clear on that. And I would put the onus back on the individuals. Look, we all want to believe what's good for us. We all want to believe the nice things, and someone tells us something totally impossible. Well, maybe we suspend our belief because we want this to happen. Or we can't win a lottery ticket, but maybe we can take our dinar down to some place and get money for it. But why are we choosing to believe that person? This is the question. And so what the religious element can say is, well, you fell for that one, didn't you? Instead of going out and helping, you waited to cash in a non-existent check, and you should have been working beforehand. So that's how I see it. I see it that it is the individual's choice what he or she chooses to believe.
Thank you.
So this question comes from Maria in Crete, Greece. It says, "Hi, Simon and family. It has been said by many whistleblowers in the recent past that many will leave and few will manage to stay. It's difficult for me to understand this because although it sounds logical, in my consciousness, it sounds absurd. The levels of time and understanding of awakening differ from person to person, and not everyone can be awakened by a certain moment. Does that mean they will have to stay behind? I'm grateful."
No. The esoteric schools, the magic schools, for want of a better word, the secret societies have known of this at least since the time of the Egyptian pharaohs, and probably before that. So it's only since 2012 that the general public began to be aware of a big change that occurred in 2012, the portal, Lionsgate, and the future that was coming. The way I see it is not the Hollywood style where you go to bed on Friday night and you wake up on Saturday and half the world has disappeared. That isn't fair, and it isn't the work of the creator. What I do see is, whether you want to call it the Schumann resonance or something else, but the frequency of the planet changes, and those people who are spiritually minded, their frequency also changes to keep up in tune with that frequency. Those people who are not in tune with that frequency, their frequency stays at the level they were born with, maybe. And the result is that they become less and less compatible with the earth until such point is that they can no longer beget children. So what will happen is that over a period of time, through natural selection, totally opposite from Charles Darwin's natural selection, but natural selection, those that are not just on the earth piggybacking along for a ride, but those that are actually inseparable from the female earth, whether they're male or female doesn't matter, but female earth, they will be in tune and they're more likely to have children. Those that are not will become barren, and over a period of years, then that's a natural way of doing it. Nobody dies, there's no war, it's just a natural selection of choice, free will, who is choosing to evolve and who is choosing to stay where they are. Okay.
Thank you.
So Anthony from North Carolina is asking, as we watch things unfold on the world stage, how do we distinguish between who is a white hat, who is a black hat, and who is an actor or pawn?
I think that's very much like the earlier question. You really have to ask who you are and who you think resonates with you. Who would you invite round for tea or a drink in the bar? Who would you want to spend time with? Not because they're telling you things you want to hear, but because you actually think it's right. So you make that choice. Actions speak louder than words. And as an ex-politician, I always knew it was a lot easier to win my first election because I made promises. When I won my second election, it was because I delivered on those promises. So people they were saying, well, did he do what he promised? And, I was re-elected. I did three terms of office. But the point is that you have to decide whether a person's right for you in terms of the message they have, if they feel okay to you. You can go into a doctor's surgery, you go into any room and you feel very uncomfortable about a person sitting opposite you, and you've never met them in your life, but you instinctively know something's wrong. So trust trust those feelings. Okay.
Thank you.
So RF from Oregon asks, can you comment on the things collected and hidden in the Vatican that is different from the current understanding of God or Jesus or other things like the Ethiopian Bible? And if so, how will it be integrated into our current belief systems?
The Vatican wasn't the only repository of secret artifacts or knowledge. The Knights Templars have for many, many years been attempting to obtain items that they felt the human race wasn't yet ready for and protecting them. You might say they were keeping them, but they would say they were protecting them. The Vatican did have most of its treasures removed. What will happen, I think, in the future is that they will, as new patents are approved, so some of these technologies will come in with that. In terms of the word of God, that anything that is extant upon the earth has God's permission, either for good or for ill. And so it's what men, and I use the word men because men are the problem, women aren't usually the problem, it's what men do with them. You know, the guy created dynamite because he wanted to help people who were digging holes in the ground, mining to keep down the death. And then they took that and made bombs out of it. So it's not the substance, it's what we do with it. So there are a great deal of artifacts which could be used for good, but we'd have to be very sure that they were to be used for good before they were released. And I think that is already happening. A number of thus to hidden technologies are now being released, and not through the main high street, not through even President Trump making announcements, although he did talk about medbeds. But I'm saying to you that there are technologies that are already being released. Okay.
Thank you.
So 2 people submitted this question, but I have a feeling a lot more want to know the answer. This is from Paul in Australia and Susan in Indiana. They both are asking, do we know when projects might be starting?
It's a really difficult one, because to say when a project's starting is to ask me when is the RV starting. I could take a long time on this, and people would love me to, but it wouldn't be really fair on all the other questions. That's not a cop-out to hide from it. I'll do my best in a short time. We'll talk about a shotgun start. That is not accurate. That was false information put out. What will happen is certain countries will activate, and in fact, in America, certain states will activate. Certain organizations will have the remit for certain aspects within the RV. You know, connecting consciousness is in a very privileged position, because what our members don't know, although I did talk to the coordinators about this, is that I've had a fairly recent discussion with, we call them the white hats, this helps me not have to go into detail, and a figure has been told to me how much money our organization will have for projects. So we don't have that money yet, but I have been told how much money will be made available for projects. Now that's in-house projects. We 2 years ago were asked, as an organization, we like to be involved in white hat projects. These are the projects that the white hats have had on the books for 14, 15, 20, 25 years, but would like a spiritual organization to play some role. I have no idea what that is, but to play some role in them. These will predominantly be in America, but not exclusively. And obviously I said yes to that. And that come out of a different funding pot. So one of the biggest secrets on the earth is, when does this occur? I have a rough idea in my head when it will occur. But I have never been told the day and the date. Okay.
Thank you. And hopefully you'll be doing that project podcast soon.
Yes.
And so this next question is really from a bunch of people, but I'm going to list the names of those that have been cited here. We've got Rosina and Jan from Florida, Eileen from Texas, Alyssa from Massachusetts, Christiane from North Carolina, Teresa from Washington State, Tracy and Carol from Quebec, Jeannie from South Carolina, Michael from Tennessee, and Kathy from Delaware. And so they all ask that they're excited to hear from both you and Becky, and they're sure this question's been asked by many others, but they want to ask it again. Simon, can you tell us anything about medbeds, when, where, or how it works? They appreciate it so much, and they just can't wait to hear all your information. Much love and light.
Thank you. I don't think they're asking how a medbed works. I think what they're asking is the rollout and how it is going to be brought to the public. We start at the bottom line, which is it's still a hidden technology. It's still secret. It has to be secret because although some of the rules and laws have been changed to allow it to operate when the time comes, it's still perceived as something that shouldn't exist. The military, quite understandably, have been quite jealous to protect it, and it's been given to them and they have it. But it is agreed that the public will have access to it and they won't pay for it. The problem is the numbers that have to be laid out. You cannot say to a population of 1 million in a city, 1 million people in a city, you can't say there's one office with 5 med beds in. I've heard RV commentators talking about that as absolutely nonsense, and it's been proven because all of their comments about that have just come to nothing. At the moment, med beds are on tractor trailers, traveling around, doing what they got to do with those that are priority individuals. That's in the United States. Okay. I know, as someone involved in the projects, that med beds can only go into certain type of facility. The walls have to be certain thickness. The power that it receives has to be from a fairly good source, a consistent source. There are lots of caveats around those buildings. So we have a fairly good idea. So for instance, a bank, an old disused bank is a really good building for med beds because it's built solid. A defunct hospital would be very good. An old closed down courthouse would be very good. So these locations, many of them have been identified, but do not expect millions of med beds to be made available, when the RV is announced. And anyone who's saying that is frankly pushing disinformation. I'm not going to call people liars. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say that they probably believe it themselves because the person that's given them that information, has given it to them, and they're taking it in good faith. But here's discernment, because if somebody starts giving you information, do you mindlessly just repeat that and repeat that and repeat that, or do you use discernment and say, well, that's ridiculous. That I'm not going to tell people that. I can't say that. But they're not doing that. They're just telling it exactly as they've been told, and it does a lot of harm. There are lots and lots of people with sick relatives who hold out hope for a med bed tomorrow or next week, and it is wrong to treat people like this in that way. Med beds are real, but I haven't got the rollout program. I know as an organization we will be involved with them, but I don't know when. Okay.
Thank you.
So Angie in Indiana asked this question: how can we not feel guilty for wanting to experience medbed healing and the paradigm of not having experienced God's healing through prayer? I understand some may see the medbeds as an answer to healing prayer, but others see it as a trap into transhumanism.
Okay. It's actually almost a theological question, but it's not. And in fact, in a way, I've answered this, but I'll do it in this format. when a person, it could be an American, it could have been a Brit, invented the light bulb. I think Mr. Edison takes the key for that. When they invented the light bulb, there would be people that said that's the devil's work. When the steam locomotive first came along, people said that you couldn't live at 5 miles an hour. No, the saying was, no man can live at 5 miles an hour.
Wow.
When the motor car came out, man had to walk in front with a red flag. But what's not understood is that these were invented either here on the planet or somewhere else. And therefore, God has allowed that to happen. Transhumanism is literally changing a person into a robotic state. A medbed is not about that. A medbed is about trying to return the body to its default state. So, even the Pope has said that he would baptize an alien. In other words, what the Pope's actually telling you is that God created aliens. Okay, so medbed technology has been created because God has allowed it to be created. And we know that it's good technology because the military use it. Transhumanism is a liberal stroke, left-wing stroke communist attempt to destroy the family, particularly in the United States, but also in Europe and Great Britain. And the reality here is that it is just another medical modality. 50 years' time, going to the medbed will be just the same as, somebody just doing something every day. It'll be part of our life. It's not to be feared. Okay.
Beautiful. Thank you.
So Joan from California asked the question that you've already answered. Are medbeds real? You've said yes. But they go on to ask, some are saying that the technologies that are already out there are the med beds and they all cost money, lots of it. And you said that they're free. So what's the truth? You had said that they'd be free. Well, I think they're trying to understand what is really a med bed and what are these other medical technologies.
Right. Well, first of all, the certain organizations, and CC is one of them, have been allowed to promote these advanced technologies, which are generally handheld. The key is in the word bed. A med bed is a cocoon device which you lie down in. The technologies that are available to the general public at the moment along those lines are handheld. And because they don't have United States military issue stamped on them, there is no comeback to the white hats. But what they've done, as they've always done, the United States military is the finest organization for disseminating technology to its trusted partners. There is no other military in the world to do it. Hell, they did it with Bell Labs just after the Roswell crash in 1947, where they gifted the transistor to Bell Labs. And before anybody says, but the Germans invented it, no, they didn't. The Germans were halfway there with the transistor. They didn't actually have it. So American military has always gifted the private sector with a technology that it itself has got everything out of it wants. And so there are a number of organizations, and we're one of them, that are promoting aspects of this. And you have to pay for them because there is, those of you who are an accountant, there is no budget heading for this aspect of it. These handheld devices, there is no budget heading to pay it back. So the public have to pay them. When they go to the full stream of medbed technology, there will be a budget heading because there's a cost. There's always a cost, and the budget will pick it up. So that's the answer.
Thank you very much.
So from Daniela in California, it's another medbed question. Recently, Alex Collier stated that medbeds were 3 to 4 years away. Any comments?
I would say that they were 3 to 4 years away in a mass rollout. In other words, for people to be able to reasonably well access something, you're talking that length of time. There will be some communities that have it sooner, some that have it later. I think what Alex is trying to say to people is that it's not tomorrow. And the reality is that I don't know how many people there are on the earth, you know, who knows? But you would be struggling in less than that time to do that. People talk about replicators, and they'll have to be used. But in order to open the doors to a community, you can't just present them with one hospital with 5 med beds in it. I mean, this is just ludicrous. I mean, there was a RV commentator, I've mentioned his name already, who said that, and that's just not going to happen. You would have people trampled to death at the gates trying to get in. You'd have thousands of people trying to access 5 med beds. It's just not going to happen. You need aircraft carriers full of them. You need, you know, storage bays full of them to deal with that. And the military understand that. That's why Alex is saying it's a little way away, and I agree with that. Okay.
Thank you.
So Diana from New York State is asking the same thing. I think people just need confirmation.
Oh.
Are you 100% sure we will be getting on med beds?
Who will be getting on a med bed, did you say?
It says we.
And I can't be 100% sure because I'm not being pedantic. I'm just being very careful. Some people will. You know, if you gave me a list of 100 names, I can't know if those individual names are going to get on a med bed. I can't know that. But if the question isn't a trick question and it's just a general question like, will we, in the pejorative sense, have access to it? Yes, we will. But not everyone is going to have access to a med bed. Okay.
I think Sue has the question that maybe sums it up.
Okay.
This is from Katie in France. Can you please explain how people will access medbeds according to their spiritual state? Is it true? What does it mean?
Okay.
Thank
all right. Yeah, there's been an awful lot of most blackmail from certain RV commentators around this. And how dare they decide? They're not going to decide who's going to use it. It's got nothing to do with them. Who the hell do they think they are? What will happen is it will be on a need to do basis. In other words, those people who are tasked with ongoing delivery of humanitarian projects will need to go on med beds first, simply because they have got to keep going. And I do have to tell you, and it's very much an American thing, that most people involved in this are older people. They really are. They're older people. Those of us who are older have a track record, a trajectory of service, which can be quantified and checked up. If you're 25 years old, no disrespect, but there isn't the timeline and the frame that the white hats would say this person is solid, this person is trustworthy. But by the time you get to 50, 60, 70, they have formed an opinion about you, and you either pass or you don't pass. So if you're that age and you've got another 10 years of intense work on humanitarian projects, they'll offer you a med bed first. So it's on the priorities to deliver the white hats agenda. That's going to be the first bit. Thereafter, those people will probably recommend others that are a key part of their organization and are delivering or will deliver the outcomes and the benefits that the white hats want. Thereafter that, it's the general public. So in other words, to get the point of the spear properly forged in heat. And when that's properly hardened to take the impact, then the rest of the spear will be done. So that's how it's going to happen. If you are spiritual, you hopefully are working, on a humanitarian project. You have a key role to play, and therefore you will come to the attention of the white hats. There are plenty of very evil people who have, diseases. Who has the right to say, you've been evil, we're going to deny you this so you die? I don't have the right to do that. But what I do have the right to do as someone who will play a role in the future is to recommend, people. And then once the program's rolled out, then it will be on a completely different system, thank God. And I won't have any say in that. And it will be done on a medical basis. So those who need it most will have it first. So that's how it's been explained to me.
Thank you.
This question comes from Michael in Southwest England and Meredith in New Jersey. What kind of training, skills, or qualifications will be required of staff employed to work within CC medbed centers, as well as pre and post care units linked to the medbed centers?
Much more likely to do the post care work. The military are incredibly guarded. However, it will be possible to be an associate and to work alongside them. But you wouldn't be given any of the secrets or that, but you would have a role. And for most people, that would be absolutely fantastic to actually do that, especially if the kids are coming in and they're still coming in from these torture places. And a lot of people just want to do some good. And you don't need qualifications for that. What you need is spirituality. They're not going to say, well, you must have a PH, you must have this, you must have that. Actually, no, what you need is spirituality, love and care and compassion. If you're going to be a doctor, then yeah, of course, you're going to need those qualifications. But if you're going to be the person that brings that young person in, calms them down, talks to the parents if the parents are there, does all that, well, you don't need qualifications for that. You will have to be vetted and to checked over that you're the right sort of person for the role. The post stuff is more interesting, actually, because when someone's been on a medbed, there will be a fund of money. They don't actually have the money, but they're allocated it, and they can then go to other practitioners in that resource center. I need physiotherapy, I need counseling, I need Reiki, I need this, I need that. And they then pay those people to provide that service in what we call a one-stop shop. Okay, so you've got your med beds there, but there's all these other modalities. Now, what I want to do at CC is I want to say, right, look at all these, they're predominantly women, but not exclusively so. There are some men. And say, right, you because you have to keep your head down, the government doesn't like all this, you're doing it at home. Okay, you're doing it at home. So okay, we'll give you an office 2 days of the week. You can come and we'll do the advertising for you. And then you can do it and you can charge. And there'll be other people who have their own setup, but they might not be approved. You might have a setup that does alternative healing, but they're not part of a group that the military have approved. So they won't get a look in because you have to be approved. To be a contractor to the United States of America, you have to be approved. Here in Great Britain, if you you've got your parking lot in Great Britain, it's different in America. So I'll explain it, that we have what you call a sidewalk. We don't call it that, we call it pavement. And then you have a curb. So if you were to drive your car over the curb to get to your parking lot, it would damage your car over a long time. So you drop the curb. But in Great Britain, only an approved contractor is allowed to do it. And that's how it is in the Western world. You must be approved. So just because somebody or an organization is already up and running, it doesn't mean they're going to get the contract. I much more prefer to find individual people who've been doing it at home and bring them in and reward them than give the money to a corporate. Okay.
Great, thanks.
So the question from Donna in Maryland and also a member in Georgia has to do with medbed technology. Will it be available for animals such as pets or wild animals? And what will be the eligibility for treatment?
Right. So with the projects that CC is doing, in order to ensure that we are able to get these projects through, I have advised, and I will be working with people who have those projects, that there has to be some human element to it. I'll give you an example. A person who is elderly and has a sick animal, but we know that if that animal were to pass away, that person will be so heartbroken that they will probably just give up. So we could say that we're actually helping the human by helping the animal. Animals that have been injured in the wild, then I can see a value in that technology. But we cannot prioritize animals over people. That can't happen. But what we can say that people can benefit from animals being healed, then I think those projects have got a very good chance of being successful. There are many people who care more for animals than people, and in a strange way, I get that. But we can't do that. We have to put people first. So when this time comes, I'll be looking at our projects and thinking how best I advise the originator, the originator of this project, best to advise them what changes they might need to make to get the best chance of being funded. Okay.
Thank you.
So Shirley in Canada asks, I can't help feeling that there's more to the war in Iran than just the nuclear threat and the liberation of the Iranian people. Are you able to share on any other issues such as portals, stargates, human trafficking in Iran? Thank you. She also adds a little PS here, said, I always feel better after you give an update because you zero in on what is important to remember regarding any event.
No, thank you. Well, I haven't said this for about 10 years. I used to say that in the early days, I, like everyone else, I would listen to other supposed experts. And I was absolutely shocked and horrified that they'd spend time, the co-host or the host is there, and they'd talk about the TV or the film. And I think, you've got limited time. Why don't you just get into the business and talk about it? Why are you talking about nonsense and rubbish? So it really annoyed me. So when I get asked a question, I try to not tell you what I had for breakfast, but try to answer it. So the answer here is yes, that part of the world is very heavy with alien technologies, both above ground and underground. But we don't need to look that far. This is a little bit more closer to home. This is about Iran funding certain deep state projects with its oil. So what President Trump quite correctly, in my opinion, is doing is he's blocking the Iranian tankers from exporting the oil to the deep state. That's what this is about. So it's actually about strangling the money supply to the deep state, which had been coming from Iran.
Good to know. Thank you, Simon.
So Jacqueline from Trinidad and Tobago wants to know, can you explain once again how the change from 3D to 5D affects us with regard to our family who are not quite awakened yet? Honestly, I would not like to be in I would not like to not be in communication with my children and grandchildren, as I am such a huge part of their lives.
Yes, and that's not on the cards at all. That's not what's on offer. I've sort of answered this a bit earlier. There are people, lots and lots of people on the planet, that their soul is not from this earth, and therefore it's of a different frequency. And that can be any frequency. And the higher the frequency, the more work either God or aliens have done to the human form to be able to be compatible with the frequency of the soul in their body. So what we talk about when we talk about going into the fifth dimension is something that is not going to happen. You're not going to wake up one morning and see that. You're not going to have a portal and be asked to choose whether you walk through it. This choice has been going on for years. All our members here, all the people on the earth, faced every day with choices, and their daily choices dictate whether at some point they will evolve. Most of the evil, 99% of all the evil on the earth, is not from the earth. It is lower fourth dimension that has been exported to here. So if we overcome the issues on this earth, not only do we overcome the life and the prison that we are in, but we actually overcome the source of that, which is the lower fourth. So why would we need to evolve into the fourth? This is the point. We leapfrog it. We will leapfrog that and go into the fifth. Now, that isn't what's happened to other planets. So the Palladians, who are fifth dimensional, they were third dimension like we are. They evolved into the fourth, and then from the fourth into the fifth. But we've had all this evil exported to us. So in effect, we don't need to spend time in the fourth because we've already overcome that. So we will go directly to the fifth, but it will be as I explained about, certain people will be able to have children and certain people won't. It is a longer term operation. But those of you who are spiritually minded and you say, well, look, my brother doesn't listen to me, or my mother doesn't, or my father, or what have you, partner, husband, wife. That's because you've evolved. That's because the soul in your body has overcome the programming put in your mind by the establishment that you've grown up in. And those people who are not at your level, they have not yet overcome that programming, because the mind has blocked the soul from communicating to you. But when you break free of that, the soul then imparts information and knowledge which you don't reject. And as a result of that, you are not part of the human control network. You are part of the earth and the life on the earth and the greater power, but you're not part of the control system. And every person on this planet has an opportunity at least once in their lifetime to break free. Whether they take it or not, who knows? But you did, all of you who are here, because you're here. Those people sitting at home clutching their Zim notes or their Vietnamese dong or their Iraqi dinar, they didn't, because they're still in the greed world. They're sitting at home saying, well, look, when I get my multi-millions, I'm going to go out and do good work. But that isn't what we want to see. We want to see you doing the good work now. And you don't have the multi-millions. So that's really what it's all about. Okay.
Thank you. Beautiful.
So Kathy from North Carolina writes, I have experienced many physical symptoms that I have attributed to spiritual growth, ascension, becoming, including body aches, fluctuating changes in vision, monumental fatigue, and emotional upheaval. These are most profound, but there are others. My question is, will these subside as we move into a higher frequencies, and will our bodies be transformed into higher levels of health?
Well, it is always very good to go to your regular doctor with a white coat and the stethoscope round his or her neck, just to get yourself checked out. And being checked out is great. Of course, I'm not a doctor, but my view is that as the frequencies of the world change, we in a physical body are trying to play catch up. And you know, the number of people who've said to me, it feels like I've climbed a mountain. I feel like I've been hit by a steam train or whatever it is. The reality is that is a good sign, because you are changing. Someone who says, well, it's Monday morning, back to work. They're not feeling anything except the control system of Monday. If you're thinking, wow, I don't know what's been going on, but you know, I feel like I've done this, that, and the other. It's a completely different mindset. But if you do have aches and pains, if you have migraines or you have bad vision, then you know you do need to go to the doctor, because we have physical bodies, and you know it is important to have it checked out. I mean, I'd love it for the doctor to say nothing wrong with you, can't find anything wrong with you, go back and see Simon, because basically then that's what we're saying is happening. Okay.
Thank you, Simon.
So Sherry in Ohio is asking about chemtrails because they're still seeing them, and she wants to know, are they beneficial or toxic?
Okay, well, I can't see those chemtrails. I haven't got a photograph of them, but over 2 years ago now, there was a big operation to disable those chemtrailing in terms of heavy metals that were being put down. It wasn't just heavy metals, there were viruses and bacteria, a whole load of stuff. And absolutely, it's true. You know, they would actually have a gelatine plasma that would be ejected, and that provided food for these bacteria or organisms. So when it fell from the sky, it had food to live on. And that was a real phenomena that was taking place. With food crops that grow, the roots don't go down that deep, maybe 3 feet or a meter if you're European. And the concern is cadmium, lithium, mercury, all of the metals. So since the last 2 years, the vast majority of the chemtrails have created a flood of water, and they are attempting to flush out below this root crop line these heavy metals. So if you don't have any chemtrails, then I would suggest that the secret lab reports they've been doing come back in your area and it's clear. If you're still getting them and you're still getting a lot of rain, then that's a good thing, because they're still feeling that they're not clear. So don't look on those chemtrails as bad anymore. The deep state do not have control of them. Okay.
Beautiful, thank you.
So ZJ in UK asks, what's going on in the UK? Do the White Hats have control of Starmer?
The White Hats have got control of just about every politician on the planet. We do have to be careful here, because I don't want to cause difficulty to an operation. Sometimes a people are so controlled through 50, 60 years of programming that we can't rely on them to break free. And so sometimes they have to be shown how they're being treated. And that means that some things have to happen and the mainstream media have to report it, and it's in their face. I'll give you an example of this. In Great Britain and Germany and a couple of other countries, there was talk of everyone was going to eat insects. Supermarkets were going to be full of jars of insects. Now, that never happened. It was never going to happen. but it was literally designed to make people, change their opinions. In Great Britain, that's the question. I'm calling it Great Britain. That's because I'm old-fashioned. United Kingdom, the natural party of government was the Conservative Party, and it destroyed itself. Now, I'm an ex-politician. I'm a successful ex-politician. Successful means that when you decided to leave office, you left it not because you were voted out, but because you decided to leave. And I was never voted out. I decided to leave. So I'm a successful politician. Politicians do not destroy themselves politically. It's just not in your nature. So if you do something that is going to destroy you, someone's told you to do that. So the Conservative Party destroyed itself politically. Then that left the Labour Party. The Labour government is now in power, and it is destroying itself politically. I think that Starmer will call a snap general election much sooner than he needs to. And then the public will have to decide who they vote for. With the two main parties no longer electable in Great Britain, that leaves two possibles. One is the Green Party, and the other is Nigel Farage's Reform. So that's where the United Kingdom's heading, a straight fight between the Green Party and Nigel Farage's Reform. Okay?
Thank you.
Rita from Pennsylvania is asking, whatever happened to the several plane loads of money and artifacts from the Vatican that were flown to the U.S.? Will we ever see any of it? Will it be returned to the people?
Wherever it could be returned, it's already been returned. There was a lot of Jewish artifacts and they have gone back. But in most cases, it's impossible to trace the owner. That's the problem. It's impossible to trace the owner. Where the ownership could not be proven, such things have been melted down or sold to museums or used for the coming RV. You see, some of these treasures are hundreds, if not thousands of years old. So you can identify something that's come from a country. So you could give it back, but only if you trusted the government. So you might have to put it in trust until such time as that government of that country is the right thing for it. All of the wealth that could be returned has been, but I have to tell you that the vast majority could not be, and probably will fund the coming new future. And that President Trump and a number of others read from the Bible, the Old Testament, all choosing Solomon. And of course, in the RV circles, those of us know that we refer to it as Solomon's gold. It's not widely known, but King Solomon started to build up a war chest of gold, but not for a war. And he was the first ruler to say, it will not just be for the Jewish people, my people. It won't just be for this community. It will be for any good people. Hence, it was Solomon's gold to be used for humanitarian purposes. And throughout the history, that gold's gone here, there, and everywhere, and all the rest of it. Now it's coming back, and Solomon's gold will be used for good purposes. That's very important. That's why President Trump was reading, and all the others reading from Solomon's book. That's from Solomon. Okay, and that's very exciting.
Thank you.
So Celeste from South Africa writes, I have noticed that more times than not, when I happen to check the time, I get repeating numbers, 7:07, 12:12, 15:15, etc. Could there be a meaning that I am missing in this phenomenon?
Everything is specific to each individual person. And it isn't something that happens all the time. But it's more about, do you see it, and do you question it, and do you learn from it. So an unawake and unaware person could check his or her watch and see it say 1111. There's a digital watch, and they either think it's broken or it's coincidence. I remember a simple little thing many years ago, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the doorbell went exactly at 3 o'clock, and it was the postman, exactly for those 3 days. Now, if you're an unawake and unaware person, it just goes, as we say in Great Britain, over your head. You just don't care about it. But if you're spiritual, you're psychic, or you're aware, you know that there's something going on, and therefore you should act on it. So what is going on? That's really what our questioner is asking here. It is more likely that the individual is drawing certain energies to them. It is more likely that they are entering a field outside of the normal consciousness of humanity, where numbers or colors or actions have been specifically chosen to impact that individual's life. And a much more simpler way of doing it is someone who 10 years ago has a dream, and then they decide that they'll walk a different way home. And they walk a different way home, and they see a house which they've never seen before. Is exactly like the dream they had 10 years ago. Or they'll find a piece of trash on the floor, literally on the pavement, on the sidewalk, and it's a sweet wrapper, a candy wrapper, and it has 2 letters on it because the rest has all been torn off. But the 2 letters are the initial of their first name and the initial of their second name. An unawake and unaware person won't even register it. But those who are will say, that's aimed at me. That is a message to me. And then they'll spend their time trying to worm the message out. They may never do that. That's not the point. The point is that they're acting. So whoever is trying to prod them with a stick to get them to do something, you are responding and showing that it was worth the while and not to give up. So it's very exciting, and there's a lot of it goes on. Thank you.
Very interesting. Thank you.
So Gundi from New York wants to know, how do you see the world 10 years from now? Is the cabal completely gone then?
No, the cabal will not be completely gone, because there is a devil and there is God. There has to be a counterbalance. It is the way of it. However, the control, the authority of the cabal will have gone. So they will exist in bloodline. They will have dominion over their own people. Sounds very religious, but I think that sums it up correctly. They'll be given dominion over their own people, but they will not have dominion over the vast majority of people. So how do I see the world in 10 years? I see it as a much more spiritual world that is beginning to catch up with its technological advances. When man and woman had a bow and arrow, its spirituality was probably in advance of its weaponry. In other words, there are still today African tribes and native indigenous tribes that when they kill an animal to eat it for food, they give thanks and say, I'm not killing this animal for fun, I'm doing it because I have to live. That's actually a spiritual, it's a level of spiritual understanding. And then when the Chinese invented gunpowder and that came over here, our technological advance outstripped our spiritual advance. Then we became heavily industrialized, and again spirituality took a back seat because we were too busy hammering a piece of metal to make a sword. So it's a good question. Thank you.
Thanks.
So Denise of Washington State asks, since the JFK assassination in 1963, the US has given a ton of money to Israel. It appears that Israel is running the US, especially now with the war in Iran. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, not exactly true. In the 50s, after the Jewish state was conceived, in the 50s and 60s, America played a very, very small role with Israel. It was the French. It was the French that actually supported Israel. It was the French that gave the nuclear bomb to Israel, not the Americans. In 1974, the Yom Kippur War started, and that was the turning point when America fully funded Israel. Prior to that, in the late 60s, after the Six-Day War in 1967, America did start militarily funding Israel, but it wasn't until 1974 that America literally ran it. If anybody thinks that the tail wags the dog, they're totally wrong. Israel does not control America. America controls Israel. There are very powerful people. There are Jews in many important places, particularly in the banking world. And there's a reason for that, because unfortunately, the Catholics and other religions in the late Middle Ages passed a law preventing Jews from working. It's not widely known that in Europe, including Britain, it was illegal for a Jew to work. However, there was a clause in this, and it forgot to mention that it was possible for a Jew to lend somebody money. And that's what the Jews did. They got together, families got together, they pooled their resources, and then they went to a legit business and said, I hear you're short of money, we'll lend you this, and this is the interest rate you want on it. And of course, you get Shakespeare talking about Shylock, etc., etc. But the reality was that it was the Western world that stopped the Jews from working and forced Jews to lend money because it was the only thing they were allowed to do. So that is why Jews are heavily into money, because they're so good at it. They are really good at it. They actually make a ton of money. And a lot of people who are non-Jews go to Jews and say, hey, listen, I've got this investment. Where do I need to invest it? And generally speaking, they work out quite well. In terms of the politics of it, the Christian Bible and the Judeo Bible are very, very similar. The line is drawn that the Jews say that Jesus was a prophet, but not the Son of God. The Christians say that Jesus was both the Son of God. So, but other than that, it's the same God, it's the same Bible. And that is why the Jews and the Christians, at a governmental level, at a military level, are singing from the same hymn book. Okay, and so the Jews, we when Biden was in power, there was all this talk about Zionism, and people haven't a clue what Zionism is. They don't understand it. Zionism. And then when Trump comes in, Trump's working with Israel to take down the deep state, even though there is deep state in Israel. Of course there is. There's deep state in Great Britain. There's deep state in America. There's everywhere. But Netanyahu threw his lot in with Trump because he realized that, like so many of the world leaders, that Trump was going to win. That doesn't mean that there aren't bad people. Of course there are. But the reality is that America rules the world. Now, let's just get that straight. So I know I'm wasting my time in a way with this one, but remember when I went to the space, I got the tour of the Space Radar base in Britain in 2013 now, and I was given a 3-hour tour of the Space Radar. I was told that if Britain ever turned against America, somebody in Cape Canaveral would press a button, and then a foam, which was very acidic, would be injected automatically into all of the computer consoles, which would leach away all of the computer chips so that nobody could access the computer chips in Britain. And they said, we can't explode them with explosives because you've got a fragment of a computer chip, you can rebuild it. So we eat it away with acid. So this was a British, quote, facility in Great Britain. Everything is controlled by America. Okay?
Thank you.
Little change of pace. Pauline in Quebec wants to know, what is the difference between unconditional love and compassion? Compassion not from an intellectual approach, sympathy or pity, but from the heart. Thank you.
Okay. It sounds complicated. Thank goodness it's not. You can have compassion, but still be an evil person. You could hate people, but have a compassion for your dog. That's a very broad point. Let's get right down to what this question is asking. If you love somebody, let's keep it to people. If you love somebody unconditionally, it means that you shouldn't give your love for a return price, and you shouldn't judge. But compassion means I could be compassionate for your care, but I still want to tell you what to do. So that's the difference. Compassion is a concern and an understanding for suffering and pain in a person. Unconditional love is exactly what it says it is I give my love to you and I don't want anything back in return for it. Okay.
Thanks.
So Mike from Florida asks, what is the most effective way to bypass the conditioned mental state and access and express our true, authentic being?
Your true, authentic being is a combination of your mind and your soul. That is why you've incarnated in that body. There must be some form of synergy between the two. But we are talking about the soul. The physical body will die. The soul never dies. And so it's about allowing the soul to communicate and act on that communication. And in history, there are many aspects to it. The film Dumbo with Jiminy Cricket talking about the people that sit on your shoulder, whispering the good and the bad. This is a very good analogy for your brain and your soul. And so your true, authentic self is when your soul and your brain are one, which means that your brain literally has to take a back seat and accept that the soul is more important and that the brain cannot override the soul in terms of critical matters. So yeah, if you are doing your bank book, you don't want your soul to be doing that. Your brain's got to do that. But if you're talking about other things, then it's the soul that must dictate that. Okay.
Thank you.
Sherry from North Carolina is asking, how do souls work? Are there an infinite number of them, and when do they enter the human body?
I don't want you to think of a production line, but they are created by God, and only God will know and dictate the amount and the ratio and the number, male or female, and they are male or female. There is no in between. God does not create an in between. God creates male or female. I do not know the number, but I do know that this planet is oversubscribed. You literally have to draw the lucky golden ticket to come here, because it is the place that you experience more in 10 years than you would 1,000 years on any other planet. The level of learning available here is phenomenal. And our development physically, spiritually, cannot be beaten. So we are a species which is deeply watched because we are exciting. It's like Friday night television to these aliens, because, well, we're going to watch, because we're going to see so much, we're going to learn so much. And it's not boring for them. It's really exciting. And it has to be regulated, because they can't generally come here unless it's regulated. You know, some of the interactions have been unregulated. Those with the military are regulated. So where the different militaries of the world have an ongoing relationship with non-human entities, that is very easily controlled and regulated. And what often these entities will do is bypass that and just deal directly with individuals for their own purposes. Okay.
Thanks.
So Edward in Florida says, when will our projects get funded approximately? Should I have more information on my project, which is nonprofit in essence, with a business plan? I also have my business LLC to keep everything up board and legitimate.
Okay. I don't know. When I am told which countries Connecting Consciousness has interaction with, when those countries are activated, I will go to the coordinators of that state or that country and say, your area, your location is now ready to go, and we will work on those projects for that area. And that's just the way it is.
And they're not sending any
Carol's
more
just
information.
telling me she's sweating away here. Carol's saying, please don't send any more information in. What will happen when I get the go ahead? Then I will say to people, you submitted your projects to us a long time ago, and things would have changed. That's fine. You get I like what you did. So you now got some time to redo it. So if you've chosen a building and that building doesn't exist anymore, go find another building. It's the essence of the spirituality that I want. Look, when we did this, those of you who've been with me long enough now, everybody wanted to do a business plan, because that's what you do for the bank. We're not a bank. We'll never be a bank. We'll hold money, but we'll never be a bank. And I said, I'm not interested in that. I just want half a page of paper or what have you. And I just want an outline, because I want the spirituality. Those projects that get chosen, what's going to happen is that Connecting Consciousness will pay for a private company to work with you guys who've been approved online to build your business plan up that the white hats want. So for instance, I will choose the projects. Hey, look, I really like that one. That's really good. Let's go with that. It's really low on this, but it's really high on that. So they will maybe, I don't know, twice a week, they'll do an hour with a private company on a Zoom call. That company will work with them, and then they'll do a business plan together. That business plan will then go through to the white hats. And if it's good, it will be funded. So that's what's going to happen. So that's why I'm not bothered about business plans. And I never was, because this is not about making a profit. Remember, you don't pay anything. I mean, I'm sick to the back teeth of hearing people say, send me your business plan for the projects, and I'll only charge you $100 or this, that, and the other. Well, that's not, they're not real. Because if you're real, you know it's free. There is so much money going to be made available, but only to the right ways. Okay. And this just scams out there. And, we've been absolutely consistent how we're going to work this. And yeah, you've got a project. I like it. You work with a private company. There'll probably be about, 10 or 20 of you on a call with a private company. And then you'll send your submissions to them. They'll say, right, you need to put this in, you need to do that, you need to do that. And then boom, goes through, you get funded. and you will draw a salary because you'll be heading that project. And, you know, that's how it's going to be.
Thank you, Simon.
So Katie from Georgia is curious about J.D. Vance's comment to a Christian group recently that aliens are demons. And like some probably could fit that, but what is the white hat perspective here?
Okay. If you're not just American, you'd have to be in a certain part of America. I actually call America the God-given country. I don't call Israel that. It's very important. I call America the God-given country because there is a covenant between the United States and God. But that's not understood, and no mainstream will. I'm telling you that. That's understood by those of us who know. In what's very rudely referred to as the Bible Belt in America, very rudely call that, there is a real feeling that aliens are demons because only God is God and everything else is out. The difficulty is if you are of that opinion, you'll be shocked to learn that you think the same way the Muslims think. Muslims are taught in the Quran that everything alien is a demon. Everything alien is a jinn, J-I-N-N. So Muslims don't believe in flying saucers or aliens, they believe in demons and jinn. So if you were to show pictures of flying saucers to a devout Muslim, they would say that's a jinn, that's a demon. So when we get religion that is so focused, it becomes on the verge of intolerant. You know, you can't, with some Christian religions, you can't sit down and have an evening meal with a candle flame because they will say that's the devil. Flame is Lucifer, it's the devil. You can't eat, it's sacrifice, all the rest of it. Although, of course, in the Bible, God was asking Abraham to make sacrifices all the time, and we call them burnt offerings. So the problem is that religion has been twisted by men, not women, men, so that the story fits the modern history, if you like. So what J.D. Vance was doing was basically saying, look, if you're a devout Christian, then I get it. You know, all aliens are demons. But every president since actually before the Second World War, I can't go into that now, has been briefed on the alien situation. And remember that Jimmy Carter broke down and cried because he couldn't handle it, because he was a very strong Christian. Do you remember he changed it from Air Force One to Peanut One? Do you remember that? Are you old enough to remember that? And he couldn't cope with it. And he said, I don't want to know anymore. Don't tell me anymore. I can't. And then you've got people like President Trump who have had the full briefing. Richard Nixon had the full briefing. Lots of them have. Reagan had the full briefing, hence his discussion in the United Nations about, I sometimes think that if we were attacked from outside, it would unite all of humanity. No, it is a theological issue, and J.D. Vance has just been careful. Okay.
Thanks.
So Rochelle from Southeast Idaho writes, I have a question about the relationship between human abilities, those from off-planet origins, and the labels attached to them by society. I was professionally labeled with ASD level 1, Asperger's, a few years ago after years of struggling to adapt and be understood. And although I've always felt different, my awakening to otherworldly possibilities have developed more recently to the point where I believe that the ASD label, among others, is actually a way of keeping us from fulfilling our true purpose while here on this little blue planet. What's your perspective on this based on your experiences and other world entities?
Well, it wouldn't be the only label used on people to control them. In fact, if you factionalize individuals, then you split them up. Wasn't the Tower of Babel a way of factionalizing so that nobody spoke one tongue, therefore they couldn't work together, they were all split up, they all spoke different languages, they couldn't challenge God. But the reality is that you can't challenge the system if you are part of a tribe. You might be white colored skin, you might be black colored skin, you might live in this end of the neighborhood as opposed to that end of the neighborhood. You might dress in this style, you might dress in that style, and these are all labels which advertise you to others so that rightly or wrongly they form an opinion of which group you might be in and what your opinions and your thoughts are. So it's very important that we first of all understand that labeling is a control mechanism. In terms of the particular issues that the member has brought forward, some of these issues break down the control system so that that individual becomes a high functioning individual. Becky becomes a high functioning individual. Unfortunately, because of the limitations of the human understanding, those people are not challenged in the right way to bring out the best of them. They are not channeled or educated in the right way, and as a result of which they are, quote, managed within society. Individuals who have those issues are geniuses, but are not capable of expressing it because the system doesn't give them the framework with which they can express that. So it is a failing of our society, a failing of our governance to put the right resources to change the mindset rather than the failure or the fault of the individual. And unfortunately, as it stands at the moment, everything is aimed at making the organization get the easy way out and not the public. So for instance, the best way to describe it would be a big store, 500 staff, lots of customers, lots of departments, and then a little room, and it says complaints department. And there's one person sits there with the, and a whole queue of people wanting to complain because the system doesn't want to empower the individuals, it wants to control it. And so it draws it all out to be a long run. So education, the way that the government deals with people, it costs money to say, okay, I can't deal with you in this way, so we need a different way to deal with you. But I don't have a budget heading for that, and I can't do that. So I'm just going to be rude to you or say, you can't have this, or I don't know what to do with you, go away. And that's a failing of our system. It's not the fault of the individual. Okay?
Thank you, Simon.
So Cynthia in New York wants to know, when you and Becky started CC years ago, did you already foresee these troubled times and the role CC might play?
Well, Becky and I, the CC that we have today is the one that Becky and I formed in 2015/16. I formed CC before then. I was informed what was likely to come our way, but I was left to decide how I should deal with that. In other words, nobody said to me, this is the problem, here's the solution. And what they said is, this is the problem, you come up with a solution. And that was a test. So I formed CC on a basis. I did have help. I mean, you know, we had one of the Dragon families talk to me about the RV and explain about the RV, and how that, you know, CC could play an important role in that. We had American intelligence, we had American military side. Sorry,
This is being recorded on live on YouTube. This right now.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Who's doing that?
Someone's
Let's
doing.
ask who's doing that.
Yeah, who is actually recording? We've just been informed.
Who's recording this live?
We've just been informed that this is being recorded live and placed on YouTube. So who's doing that? Somebody here tonight. Very naughty. I'm banned from YouTube, so it'll be taken down very quickly because I'm on there. One of the interesting things about being funded is that I've already had a discussion with the White Hats, and that we will have access. We have to pay for it, but we'll have access to some rather wonderful technology, which will allow us to find people and deal with it. But at the moment, you know, we don't have that funding, so we just have to ask people to respect our views and not do it. I said at the beginning of this that I didn't want it to go onto YouTube because I didn't want people to get what you're getting tonight. You know, you're in CC, you do all the good work, so you should be rewarded by having this opportunity to put your question. And it didn't seem right to me that individuals who have no input into our organization should just be able to sit at home and enjoy it. And it's a breach of trust. So, you know, people who are doing that, if we find them, then obviously you won't play a part in CC. You won't have a project because, you know, you're just betraying the trust that I have put in there. So I'm going to stop it now because of that. That person has ruined it for all of you. So what we'll do next time is obviously we'll go on to our internal in-house project, which platform which can't be copied and done. So I'm just going to stop.
Wanted to raise a point here, Simon. It's
Yeah.
Kita. I've just noticed that there's a REC on my, and it says iCloud recording. Is that what you're referring to?
No, it's a recording.
I feel
Not you. It's a recording. No, it's a recording to YouTube. There are. No, it's fine. Thank you, darling. There are people who, for some reason, just, I don't know. They're not really nice people. They just literally want to cause trouble. Perhaps, I don't know, they wanted to have a role as an event host, or they wanted to be something and they got turned down, and so they got very cross about that. It's about egos, and it's about things like that. So, you know, I wanted this to be for our community. You know, I sometimes, when I go with Kerry Cassidy, and I say to people there, thank you for paying to come to Kerry's you know, conference, because, you know, you pay for the upkeep of the hall, and all the people at home who don't come to the conference, they expect to see that on YouTube. And, you know, so that's why I understand why sometimes people like Kerry charge, because it's just not fair, really. If people make the effort, you guys made the effort tonight. I know there are lots of people that couldn't get on and they wanted to be here tonight. So it's a way that I try to reward people by giving you the chance to have your own personal question asked. And that's something that people sitting at home can never do. And it's one of the few ways that I want to say thank you. So, yeah, we've detected that. And there will be efforts made to find out who that is. And obviously, once we find that out, then we'll take care of that. So thank you. If you can do any donations, then I would be very grateful. Listen, I love all of you, except those of you who are working against this organization. But maybe also I should love you and forgive you. Maybe I'm not highly evolved enough to do that. But I am evolved enough to say all of you who care, and you whatever it is you do, and you do it for goodness, You are an absolute credit to yourselves, to the community around you, and to this organization. And, you know, it is so important to Becky and I that every one of you never give up. You continually keep striving to deliver the best that you can, because basically you don't want to give up on humanity. And I get cross sometimes. I get cross with people, and I get cross with it, you know, but there are always good people out there. And if we ever forget that, then we've lost. All right. We must remember there are good people out there. All right, listen, thank you. We will redo this. We'll redo it through our own network. And if you didn't have your question, don't worry. They're going to come through, and we'll pick it up where we're
Do
left
it
off.
again.
You all say
Lots of love.
thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very
I mean,
much.
thank you, Becky. Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.
God bless.
Good evening, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Recording stopped.
Simon, Becky.
Bye.